welcome back to me talking about all the books that I have read ever and my exhaustive opinions on them. So, last month in June, I ended up reading 17 books with 1 DNF, so yesterday I was at church and I had realized the day before that my Goodreads and my Fable and my Storygraph numbers were all different for how many books I've read this year, and I'm like, it has to be Storygraph, that one has to be the one that's wrong, because I have complete faith in my Goodreads numbers, right? Because that's the one I go to first to update, so I'm like, that one has to be right. So I went through and I did all the math and I figured everything out, and I'm like, it's my Goodreads that's wrong, because Fable counts the DNF as a book, Storygraph didn't count it as a book, and then for some reason on Goodreads it counted the DNF as a book, but then it also has one random book in there, and I don't know what it is. I can't find it. I can't there's no books that says I've read twice and it counts 1 year. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know what the book is that it's counting twice, and it's kind of driving me insane because I can't figure it out. So anyway, my number for the year, my year total, is 123 books in June, according to Storygraph, because Fable said it was 124, but it counted the DNF. So we're not counting the DNF because that just is going to make my life easier, because I rely on the statistics on Storygraph, so we're just going to follow those numbers, and I know they're correct now, so it's fine. Anyway, that's the whole thing. My average rating for this month was 4 stars, and I had 3 new 5-star books and no reread 5-star books, which is pretty cool. And I read 13 new books, and I reread 4 books this month. So the first book that I read this month was The Best Kept Secrets by Sarah Meaden. This is the 3rd book in the Huntresses series, and I adore them all the time. This is 5 stars. I think I wrote love with 3 exclamation points in my notes right here. It is such a good book. It is so cute. I absolutely love this series. This series is the sequel series to the Jonquil Lancaster family series, and this follows the friend group of the 2 youngest kids that got married. It follows their friend group as they all fall in love and get married. And I loved the story. It didn't fall the way that I thought it was going to. They fell in love really early on, and they know that they're in love. And it's less of a, he doesn't love me, all this stuff, there's no love. It's more of how in the world can we make this work? There's no way we can make this work. And she's kind of fallen into doing more of those recently, because she's written quite a lot of books in this world and in this series. And her first books were very much miscommunication tropes and all that stuff. And then as she's gotten better as a writer, her books have had much more interesting plots and much more dynamic characters. And I'm really enjoying it, really loving it. And I'm so excited to see what she does next, because I'm 90% sure it's going to be the main girl in this book's sister who's next, and I think I know who her love interest is, but I'll find that out later, because Miss Eden has 2 more books releasing this year, along with a gajillion novellas, which I'm actually so excited for, because I recently got Kindle Unlimited because I wanted to read The Summer I Turned Pretty, which I read in July, so I'm not going to talk about it this month, but I wanted to read The Summer I Turned Pretty, so I got Kindle Unlimited for free for 2 months, and I realized that some of my favorite authors' books are on there, literally my favorite authors in the entire world. They're on Kindle Unlimited. I can't find them in my local library, but they're on Kindle Unlimited, so I might just that might be one subscription I'm willing to pay for, actually, because Audible just isn't worth it to me, and on Kindle Unlimited you can read some of those books in Audible, so I'm like, why would I pay for Audible when I could just... Anyway, I had this whole not come to Jesus moment, that makes no sense, a enlightenment. I felt like I had discovered the Industrial Revolution, but for reading books for cheap. It was a thing. Anyway, this book was really good. 5 stars. Okay, then I listened to Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, and for some reason I thought I would listen to this book in, not June, but May, but I think it's because I've been listening to it in May, and I finished it the first day of June. So, Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik was a very interesting fairy tale retelling, and it kind of felt like, this book and the other book by her I read this month kind of felt like, what's the series? It's, Marissa Meyer, Cursed, The Cursed and Gilded Duology by Marissa Meyer. I think I read those, so the name's backwards. Those books felt like they had such an interesting story, but the execution was horrible. But these books felt like what she was trying to do in that series, and they were really similar with the woods and this creepy huntsman guy that lives in the woods and steals people if they do something wrong on different days, and just the Rumpelstiltskin kind of esque, where she can touch silver and turn it into gold. It was so interesting, and I really enjoyed it. I have to say, it is dark. It's surprisingly dark, and it's kind of gruesome. There's some scenes that I was like, oh my goodness, why are we putting in this much gore? I ended up rating it 4.5 stars because I really enjoyed it, but the pacing was weird, because for some reason I thought it was an 8-hour audiobook, but it turns out it was an 18-hour audiobook, and so I was 4 hours in, and I'm like, shouldn't we be like halfway through? Like nothing's happened. I'm only 25% of the way through the book, and I was like, okay. So the whole book, the pacing was weird. And there's these two covers by Naomi Novik. There's Spinning Silver and then Uprooted. And the covers that I saw on Goodreads looked like that they were the same series because they were so similar. I don't know. I guess I just picked up Spinning Silver first thinking it was the first book, and I started listening to that one, so I thought that it was the first book in a series for some reason. It wasn't. And so when we got to the end and it started actually wrapping up, I'm like, surely this isn't the end, like they have to leave something for the sequel. And then as I was listening to the last like 30 minutes of the book, I looked up and I'm like, oh, this is the rest of the book. So it felt, the pacing was just weird for me because I had unrealistic expectations of what was going on in the book, where it was just like this one story, but I thought it was shorter and then I thought it was longer. It was this whole thing. But it was very interesting and I did enjoy it. I think on a reread I would enjoy it more. The one thing is the romance isn't as romancy as I wanted it to be, which is funny because my critique of the next book is different, but it was interesting. Anyway, that one was okay. Then I finally finished my reread of Fablehaven with Keys to the Demon Prison by Brandon Mull. I ended up rating this one 4.25 stars on the reread. I think I wasn't rating this one as I would have if I was a middle grader, which is what I rated the Dragon Watch series, was because I was reading Dragon Watch for the first time this month, which I'll tell about later, but I rated those ones as if I was a middle grader reading them. So they're not my actual ratings, which I'll tell you my actual ratings when it's a whole thing. Anyway, so this one was 4.25 stars on the reread for me. I did enjoy it. The nostalgia got me, but my goodness, this much of the book is unnecessary. Completely unnecessary because it's a bunch of fetch quests for things that don't work out. And then when you get to the end of them, you're like, well, we exhausted all the things, might as well go to the end battle. And you're like, okay, thanks. Like, to be fair, there's some really interesting scenes and ideas in this book that I've thought of my entire life. Like, every once in a while I think about the Singing Sisters, and I think about the Totem Wall, and I think about Zizix quite a lot, and like the end battle and resolution. That's really interesting to me all the time. Like, I have a really firm concrete in my head, I can see that. But the rest of the book, it feels like Brandon Mull's an overthinker, I guess is the way to describe it. Like, even in Dragon Watch, it feels like he has this really good idea and he's read so many books where he thought about a conclusion of how it could have worked better, and so in his book he exhausts everything. He's like, okay, this one didn't work, this one didn't work, this one didn't work, so this is the one that's gonna work. And so it explains in detail, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this work. And so it becomes so repetitive because you're like, okay, I know this isn't gonna work because the last thing didn't work, so this one's not gonna work. And it doesn't feel like there's hope, really. It just feels like, oh, we need to do this thing next because this is the check mark of things that people are going to say, why don't you try to do this? I don't know. I do still really enjoy this series. I like it as a self-contained book. Like Fablehaven as itself, I really enjoy the series. Then we get to Dragon Watch, the first book in the series, and let me just say, this turns the resolution of this book on its head because Dragon Watch is the sequel series to Fablehaven. And I rated Dragon Watch 4 stars because I did enjoy the ending. I liked the nostalgia because I have read Dragon Watch before, and I enjoyed like the rollout and getting to read it, being so excited for it the first time. Like, I was enjoying the reread of Dragon Watch, and I was grateful just like to get it over with. But let me just say, the reason that the kids have to go to the Dragon Sanctuary makes no sense. No sense. Like, they try to like justify it multiple times, and to me it just felt like they're trying to get them there, and there could have been so many other reasons, because it doesn't even, like, the reason why they're there stays for a book and a half. Like, you don't have to have them do this. You can just have them accidentally get sent over. That would have been more interesting to me. And then they have to do all their fetch quests to help because the whatever his name, the sanctuary caretaker can't leave the wherever he is, so they have to go do the thing for him. For me, that would have been way more interesting. But then you wouldn't have the crippling guilt that Kendra has later on, and it just, I don't know. I did not enjoy it. I felt like it was an unnecessary plot contrivance that didn't make sense within the framework of the story, and I hated the fact that their parents, which were so important in the first series, just kind of get shoved out of the way, and you literally never see their parents again. The entire series. You see them at the beginning, and then you never see them at the end. I'm like, where? Because even at the end of Fablehaven, like, you get to see their parents, and they get to have that whole, like, oh, their parents know about all the magic. But, like, in this one, it just, it bothered me, okay? Anyway, on to the next one. Wrath of the Dragon King by Brandon Mull. I rated this one 4 stars again because I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. Again, these are rated as if I was a middle grader. In my current, all of these are like a 3-star. Every single one of the books is a 3-star. But Wrath of the Dragon King, I rated it 4 stars because it was the last reread that I had, and has a very interesting plot shift twist at the end of that book that has to do with Seth that ties into the rest of the books like quite a lot, and it's very interesting, and I enjoyed it when I reread it. But again, it felt so pointless, because in Fablehaven you have this, like, you know what you need to do. You have a very well-defined sense of, we need to save these things from these people and get them, and then when you fail at the one thing, you're like, okay, well, we got to save the other thing because this is really important. But in Dragon Watch, you have no idea what you're doing, even at the very end of the book, because you have this like one magical talisman thing that you have to protect from the dragons, and that never is important. Like, you know it's important, but they don't make it important, and you don't know what the problems would be if it gets broken, because it's never happened in the past. It doesn't even happen, like, obviously it doesn't happen because they saved the world, but like it just felt clunky to me. It felt like he had this really cool idea for the last book that just didn't work very well with the rest of the characters. Like, Seth's character development is so good. So good. I love Seth's character development. Kendra's, I wanted to throw her off a cliff the whole time. Like, she does 3 things wrong in all of the books. 10 books, she does 3 things wrong that I wrote down, and none of them have a very big, like, permanent problem, except for one of them. One of them has a big permanent problem. But the rest of them, the other 2, nothing. And I wanted her to, like, snap. I wanted her to do something, but she just was useless. Like, it drove me crazy. Like, I know she's supposed to be like the perfect prissy princess and that's her power, but like, it just felt so annoying, specifically because the rest of the books kind of turned darker and deeper, and she's still like this pretty princess, and I'm like, there just felt like no overlap between like the character development that Seth went through and the 0 character development that Kendra went through. Anyway, I'm kind of ranting about this. I did do a whole video on this, and in the spoiler section I kind of get way more ranty and annoyed with specific reasons, so if you want to see more of that, you can watch that video, but I'm going to try to keep this a little bit more to a minimum. Anyway, I was getting kind of sick of Dragon Watch books, if you can tell, so I reread Ogre Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. This is a prequel to Ella Enchanted. Let me just say, I didn't like it when I first read it, and I hated it on the reread. I think I ended up rating it 2.5 stars because there are some very interesting plot things in it, and I think some people might enjoy it, but for me personally, horrible. Hated it. It, like, my boyfriend listened to it before me, and then he reread Ella Enchanted right after because he was like, wait, what? And so he started saying, like, but what about this and what about this? I'm like, yeah, it ruins the plot of the original book because it ruins this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. And it, like, my problem with prequels, let me just go on a rant really quick. My problem with prequels to books that I love or movies that I love is the fact that in a prequel you want to introduce new, interesting, cool things into the world instead of using the things that are already in the world in the prequel. So in this book, it introduces this dynamic that never gets brought up in the original book. It's one thing if it's something in the original book that you want to know about, so then you make a prequel about it. It's one thing if this book, Ella Enchanted, is a perfect, standalone, wonderful book that I adore. It's my favorite book in the entire world. Ogre Enchanted is horrible because nothing in Ella Enchanted needs a prequel. And so Ogre Enchanted makes up some stuff for a prequel that never gets brought up in Ella Enchanted, where they're very important plot things that if it had happened in the world, they would talk about it in Ella Enchanted, and they don't. And that is one of my main problems about it. Okay, I gotta give a plot synopsis because I'm being really vague. So Ogre Enchanted, Ella Enchanted, which at this point I've said those words so many times they have no meaning. That is a book by Gail Carson Levine with Ella, and it's a Cinderella story, and so she gets cursed to always be obedient, and so she has to do whatever anyone asks her to do. And it follows her with her mom dying, and her dad sends her to boarding school, and she has these odious stepsisters, and it just follows, you know, Cinderella. But it's very interesting because she has a very distinct personality and a drive to do not only what's right, but also what she wants to do, because she never gets the choice to do what she wants to do. And it's very interesting, and I loved it when I was younger, and I've loved it on every successive reread. And so in Ogre Enchanted, it's a prequel, so it has to do with like her mom and a friend that her mom makes. Well, technically her mom isn't the main character, but she shows up in it. It has this girl who refuses a marriage offer, and so Lucinda the fairy is there, and Lucinda in Ella Enchanted curses Ella to have, well, she thinks it's a blessing, but she curses Ella to be obedient. And in this one, she curses the girl into an ogre until she accepts an offer of marriage, and she only has like 48 days or 62 days to do it or something like that. And so it follows this girl the whole book who's an ogre, trying to figure out how to be an ogre, trying to figure out how to exist around people and get a marriage offer, whilst also falling in love with the guy who first proposed to her, which she knew was going to happen the entire time, because who in the world is going to get to know an ogre? Well, they're an ogre. And it's an interesting story all by itself. I think if it was in its own world, if it was set after Ella Enchanted almost, like, I would have been so much more interested in it. But the fact that it's a prequel kind of hurts my brain, and it makes me really mad. So that's my opinion on Ogre Enchanted. Yeah, right here I said it just desecrates Ella Enchanted. So that, yep. All right, we're back to our Dragon Watch reread. And at this point, it's not a reread because of the first book of Dragon Watch that I have never read before. Yay! So we have Master of the Phantom Isle by Brandon Mull. This is the third book in the Dragon Watch series. I rated it 3.75 stars, and that is my rating as a middle grader. I absolutely despise this book. I think if I wrote, not despised, it wasn't that bad. I think I would have just rated it like 2.75 stars or something like that. This is what I wrote. I said repetitive, but there was one cool scene with sand. That's basically my opinion of the entire book. It's, again, fetch quests that have no meaning. Seth is dark and sad, and his plot is the most interesting thing, and so Kendra has to do something because she's in the book, and it's boring and useless, and nothing that they do matters at all in that entire book. It was horrible. The next one, Champion of the Titan Games by Brandon Mull. I rated it 4.5 stars. As a middle grader, again, as a human being, I probably would have rated it 3.5 stars. I wrote, it was okay, but the last 20% was good. And that's pretty much my opinion on it. Seth gets a really cool plot that he gets to do in that book. Again, really interesting. Kendra was not as bad in that book too. And I enjoyed where it's set up for the final book in the series to go. Then again, I had to take a break, so I listened to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, and I rated it 3.75 stars because was it hilarious? Yes, but it wasn't my humor. And there was this one joke at the very end that has to do with suicide that just like made me so uncomfortable. And I think it also has swearing in it too, which I forgot to write down, but it just made me feel uncomfortable, I guess, is the way to describe it. And I don't think I'm going to continue the series, even though it's interesting and I kind of do want to know what happens. I just didn't enjoy the flippantness of how it refers to everything, and it kind of made me mad. Finally, we're on Return of the Dragon Slayers, the fifth book in the Dragon Watch series by Brandon Mull. I rated this one 5 stars. As a middle grader, as a human being, probably 4.5. I wrote mostly because if I was in middle school, I would be obsessed. And it's true. This entire series, the Dragon Watch series, maybe just because I'm younger, but there's something about the descriptions that Brandon Mull gives that just do not click with my brain. Like, I can't really imagine it as much when I'm older. Like, the books that I'd already read before, I could imagine it because I already had that preconceived imagining in my head of how I imagined everything to look. But the new books that I was reading, I basically couldn't figure out where they were. Like, there were some scenes that I could figure it out, but the most of the time I was just like, this is words on page. Like, I can't see it. But there was this one scene where Seth comes down, lands on a table, and like talks to someone, and that was so interesting. I could see it in my brain. I can still see it in my brain, and I still hold that that's the coolest scene in the entire book. The resolution was interesting. I enjoyed what they did. I enjoyed like his final quest. That was really cool. I really enjoyed that, but it just felt pointless at the end. Like, the end of Fablehaven feels important because you finally accomplished this thing that you knew you had to do the whole time, and you were hoping you didn't have to do the whole time, and then finally you accomplish it in this way that you didn't think you had to do, and it was so cool. And then you get to Dragon Watch, where you get to a place that you hadn't heard about the whole time. You learned about it the book before. You don't really have a great idea of where you are because you don't have a lot of time there. There are characters that you don't really care about, like, at all. It's like this whole massive epic thing that is supposed to be epic but isn't, and then there's this giant battle that they win, kind of feels like through no fault of their own, through no power of themselves, and so the ending is just kind of like, okay, cool, that was good, great. And then again, I said before, they literally do not see their parents again at all, and I'm like, okay. And then Seth is so traumatized, and then Kendra is just an insufferable person, and I just, ugh. Anyway, if I was in middle school, I would have been obsessed. As a human, I have quite a few problems with it, including the fact that Kendra has yet more fetch quests to do. But again, I do think it was a good book. I think it was well finished, and I liked the ending. I have so many like back and forth things with this, but the best part is I literally never have to read those ever again. And I don't have to think about them all the time, because this is a series from when I was younger that I wanted to read and I wanted to finish, and I just never did. And now that it's done, I have this like weight off my chest, besides, you know, the trauma of reading the books, but it just feels so good to have it be done. Anyway, that's not a very glowing review, but if you're a middle grader, I do think you'd like it. If you're like, I think from like 10 to 16, they're good books. And then I had a couple more like random little books that has to do with Dragon Watch. There's first The Adventurer's Guide to Dragon Watch by Brandon Mull. This was kind of like a glossary of all the characters and the spells and this and that and that. And I think it would have been interesting if I hadn't read the series immediately 5 seconds before, because it just felt like I was reading the literal descriptions from the page in another book, and I'm like, I don't want to read this. So 3 stars. It wasn't really my vibe, But then I did enjoy The Legend of the Dragon Slayer, which is just basically a short story that's in the book, expanded a little bit more with pictures and horrifying illustrations of horses that I hated. I rated that one 4 stars because it was fine. And then I said, that is not a horse, that is a slug, and I still say that. Okay, finally we can get away from that. We can talk about more interesting things. All right, so first I read The Unselected Journals of M.M. Lyon Volume 2 by Beth Brower, and I rated that one 5 stars. The first one, I rated it, I think 4.75 stars because I was like, it's the first book in the series, I can't rate it 5 stars, even though I was enchanted, I was in love. And after reading the second book, I'm so excited because all of them are on Kindle Unlimited. I told you, favorite books, all on Kindle Unlimited, because I'm not paying for all those, because there's 8 of them, and I'm not paying for every single book. So I rated that one 5 stars. It was so cute. I'm really excited to keep reading them. That one follows a girl who moves to London to her house that's hers. Like it's deeded to her in her father's will, but there's a guy living there that her father didn't want her to kick out because it was like his house, it was his before, and she's like, don't kick him out, like it's our house, but like don't kick him out. And she's like, okay. But then she like meets these people, and it's like so interesting because it's London, but there's a slight not paranormal, but just like magic aspect to it, and it's so cute, it's so fun. It's written in journal, not like journal entries, so it's epistolary, and I love epistolary novels. They give me like this like charm. I love chewing on just the way they're written. They're so good. Okay, now we're to my second Naomi Novik book. I read, as you remember, if you can remember that long, because I certainly can't, Spinning Silver, and then I read Uprooted, and this one I rated 3.75 stars because the beginning, amazing, so good, and then you get halfway through and the world was confined to this really small space, like this one little town, this tower, like that is where you are, and then suddenly it's just like you're in the entire world, and you're suddenly in this place you don't care about. You're so far away, you're waiting to get back to this small area because you think you're gonna get back there, you're not quite sure, and then there's just like these huge things that are happening and you can't imagine it. Like it's too much of a magic system that doesn't have enough rules, doesn't really make sense, and so it goes from being really well defined, really well isolated, to just being too big all of a sudden, and then the way that it ends is so up in the air. And then it also has this really random love story. Okay, so it follows this girl who is kind of Beauty and the Beast, where she gets taken, so this guy, they call him Dragon, but he's a magician. He's not actually a dragon. I don't know why. It's weird. He's a magician. He lives in a tower, and every 10 years he picks a girl from the village to come to the tower. She like cooks for him, cleans for him, and then 10 years later she leaves. And then after she leaves the tower, she doesn't want to live in the valley anymore. She wants to go move somewhere else. The main character, she's like, I'm not gonna get picked. Obviously she gets picked, and she gets taken to the tower because the guy figures out that she has magic, and so he starts teaching her how to do magic. So it's really interesting, like, and she's an interesting character. Like, I like the way that she thought almost. I read a ton of reviews after this because I was finishing it and I was trying to figure out what I felt about it because I couldn't tell like what I felt really about it because I had such like conflicted ideas. And so I looked up reviews, and a lot of the reviews were like, I hated the love story, he was so mean to her. And let me just say, as a person who, the way that I talked to my boyfriend at the beginning was, we had more of a fake arguing kind of relationship. That's how I viewed the relationship with him, was just like a fake argument. Like, they're not actually mad at each other, it's just like their way to blow off steam almost. I don't know, it didn't really bother me, but a lot of people were bothered and felt like it was abusive, which to me it did not feel like it was abusive. Like, yeah, I don't know, I can see why people would say that. And then also, it just randomly out of the blue had a sex scene. Just putting that in there. That was like the only thing that and violence. There's quite a lot of violence. I triggered that in there too. Violence and death. I don't know. It just felt it felt like 2 books. Like, if you ended the first half of the book where she has to go into the town, cool. And then you did the second part where it like expands the world more, cool. I would have been fine with that. But the fact that it was all 1 book just felt like it was too much. So anyway, Naomi Novik is interesting. I think I might read more books by her because I did enjoy the way she wrote. It was very lyrical. It was very interesting. It used Czechoslovakia, I think, something. It had like Baba Yaga in it, like interesting folk tales and a different language, and it was very interesting as an audiobook to hear the person who read it had an accent. It was interesting. I don't know if I can exactly recommend it, but I did enjoy most of it. I don't know, it was weird. Okay, then I read Burn for Burn by Jenny Han and co, because there's 2 other authors, but I didn't write them down. So I rated this one 2.5 stars because it follows 3 girls who want to get revenge on people in their life for reasons. And it follows them breaking and entering, destroying property, ruining people's lives pretty much. And there's like a weird paranormal aspect to it, and there's a lot of swearing, a lot of like drugs and alcohol usage. There's a ton of like references to, I don't know, stuff that just like, it felt weird to me. It felt like wrong almost. And then there's a mention of rape, by the way. It's not super descriptive, but like it is described. So just put that trigger warning there. It was hard for me to read. And then at the very end of it, there's also an eating disorder put in there, and just like all the feelings combined were making me feel so horrible. I started reading the second book in the series, Fire with Fire by Jenny Hanako, and I was listening to it because they're so addictive, but they just made me feel so uncomfortable. And so I ended up DNFing it, not because I wanted to, but because it was making me feel so horrible. And that one, the second book, also has swearing, eating disorder, paranormal. Probably if I read more, I would have had sex and that sort of stuff in it, but I just stopped halfway through. I couldn't. I was so interested, so I actually ended up spoiling the rest of the series for myself by reading Goodreads reviews. And I think if they're on Kindle Unlimited, maybe I'd skim through them because I do want to know how it ends, but I had to DNF it for then because it made me feel so horrible to listen to them, because you have to like hear every single word they're all saying. I like talking about it. I want to know what happens. Like I know what happens, but I want to read the scenes that happens because I was genuinely interested. But I don't know. I can't recommend those books, to be honest. So there was a book on my TBR last month called Cloaked in Beauty, Texas Ever After. And Texas Ever After, it got me because it's just this dumb name and it was so funny. And I was like, this is gonna be amazing. So I picked up the book from the library without knowing what the series was, just because the name was so dumb and amazing. And then I read it, and when you hear that, you're thinking it's gonna be like modern day, right? Like that's what I'm thinking of when I think Texas Ever After. Nah, it's cowboys. It's cowboys in like the 1800s, and it made me mad, honestly, because I was so excited to read like kids in high school Texas Ever After. Like, oh, that sounded so funny to me, but nah. So my actual review of this book is the title is too good for this series. And that's kind of how I feel. I've read the first 2 books. I'm probably gonna end up reading the third because I checked it out from the library, and I don't know. I have this thing about returning books to the library unread. It feels wrong almost. It was fine. The Fairest of Heart, the first book in the series, is a Snow White retelling. And it has a girl who lives in a troupe of actors because she got turned away from her last position because the guy tried to rape her. And this one does have trigger warnings of not explicit sexual stuff, but it does include it, which is, according to the reviews, way more than most Christian people want to read, which I get it. When I was younger, I would have hated that too. And I don't think it doesn't have swearing. It's a Christian book. But also the Christian stuff is shoved down your throat. And I couldn't handle it, honestly. It was kind of driving me insane. So it has a Snow White story, and I was so entertained by this one. That's the good thing about this one, because it was so not badly written. Like the plot was kind of interesting, but the Christian stuff was driving me insane because it's Snow White and she's so perfect and all this stuff. That was driving me insane, but it was to the point that I was like annoyed enough at it to still be interested. And then the main character guy was interesting, so I enjoyed his story. So this one was fine. 3.75 stars. I'll tell you about the next one in my next review, but I ended up rating that one like 2.5 stars or something because it was just driving me insane. I couldn't handle it. Anyway, last book this month. This month felt so weird to me because I was in the middle of so many books when we went into July that it kind of feels like those books were read in June, but they weren't. They were read in July. So I have more stuff I want to tell you about, but I'll tell you in the next wrap up. Make you come back. But the last book I read this month was The Hollow Crown by Jeff Wheeler. This is the 4th book in the King Fountain series, and let me just say, amazing. Every single book in the series has a pretty significant time jump so far, because the first book follows the boy when he's a kid, and then jumps to when he's 16, then jumps to when he's 28, and this book follows his daughter when she's like 16. It's so interesting because his books have a very distinct magic style, specifically in King Fountain. When he's in like Harbinger and in like the Muirwood series, those ones have a different feel. These ones feel more like King Arthur, knights, medieval England, which is their inspiration. And so they have a different magic style where it's not as explained, it's just kind of like there and you figure it out as you read. And I really enjoy that in these ones, but it's really interesting when you also have a time jump because you have to remember who the people are and you have to get introduced to them. So the first like this much of any book, is just like figuring it out. So it has a very steep like figuring it out curve, but once you're 1-2 books in, you understand and it makes more sense. So this one wasn't as steep because I figured it all out like the previous books, but I really enjoyed this one. I rated this one 4.75 stars. I couldn't like necessarily rate it higher because it is a first book in a new arc of characters, so I couldn't rate it 5 stars, but on a reread I probably would because I really enjoyed the new character. I enjoy the way it's going. I enjoy the parallelism that he has in the series, with first parallelism to Arthur and then parallelism to the people who came before them, and it's so interesting to see like the same things happen over and over again, which is a thing that he likes to use in his series, like of the same things happening again and again, but with different characters and different things that end up happening and how people can choose their own destiny, but that like history repeats itself. It's very interesting and I enjoy it a lot. So I really recommend this series. I can't really give you a summary because if I told you anything about this book, it would ruin the books before it. Same with like the previous series, even though it has such big time jumps, it builds upon the previous thing so heavily that like you can't really say what happens because it feels like a desecration almost of the stuff that came before to like explain anything. It's such a beautiful series. I really highly recommend it, and all of his books are on Kindle Unlimited, every single one, and I didn't know this, and I have been so mad because I couldn't get my hands on them because the library didn't have like half of his series, because he's written so many books and I love them, every single one. They're my favorite in the whole world. Just his writing fills me with joy, and it's all on Kindle Unlimited, and I'm so excited to be able to read every single one of his books. If you guys want to have a full Kindle Unlimited haul of all the books I'm so thrilled to read from Kindle Unlimited, I'll make a video. I might actually just make a video for myself because I'm so happy. I'm so happy I have so many books I get to read. But anyway, I am so excited to finish the series probably this month and read more of his books from Kindle Unlimited. But those are the books I read in June. We're like a couple days into July, so I've read quite a few books already, which I'm excited to talk about. I had very much a reading slump this month, which doesn't seem like it, but I listen to a lot of books when I'm at work, so some of them are that. I had such a big reading slump for a bit because Dragon Watch and Fablehaven it was eating me away. If you couldn't tell by my review, it was almost hurting to read those books because it was just so long, so much I had to read, and it just, middle grade after a while kind of wears on you, you know, especially when you're not a middle grader anymore. I have to say, I'm totally not in the age range for Dragon Watch and Fablehaven anymore. I kind of wish I was, because that was such a simpler time in my life, but can't go back. We can just keep going forward. But I'm excited to read some more books in July. Obviously, I've already read some, but I'm excited to read more. And I hope I will see you guys in my next video at some point. Who knows when? Goodbye.